Hey guys, welcome back to Fix It Friday. So this week we're going to be working on the Neo Geo CD. This is a console that was released by SNK, and it has a bunch of games from the Neo Geo AES and MVS, and some new ones that were available to play using the brand new CD format at the time. It's a really cool console. You don't see these too often. And what we're going to do today is we're going to be installing Furtek's Neo CD SD loader. This is a new piece of hardware that allows you to play your games from an SD card instead of using the original CD drive. This is really important from a preservation standpoint because at some point, these lasers will fail, replacements for them will cease to exist. And not only that, the CD media itself is far more fragile than things like cartridges. There's issues like disk rot, which makes a lot of those games unplayable. So this is a way of preserving original hardware and allowing a person to continue to use original hardware, but with a solid state, more durable kind of solution. All right, so let's take this system apart and let's get started. Okay, so to get started, there are 4 Phillips screws on the underside of the console, which I've already gone ahead and removed. Now we're going to go ahead and pull this off. And you always want to open it up and swing it over to the left like I just did a moment ago. And just disconnect this little ribbon cable here that connects over here. Next thing we've got to do is we've got to remove these 2 boards. One of them is called the CDD board. That's this guy right here. This one up here is called the CDA. Okay, so now that the main PCB has been removed, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to solder 3 wires on the underside of this little connector here that's labeled CN3. This is kind of an optional step because with this modification, you can choose to either keep the original drive intact so that you can use it and simultaneously use the SD card, or you can just not bother with the original drive and only use the SD card. In this particular case, I'm keeping the CD drive just so that you have maximum compatibility here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 wires that were provided with the kit here. I cut them to about 6.5 inches, and we're going to solder them on the underside of this CN3. Okay, so the next step here is probably the most delicate part of the entire installation process. So right here we have a ROM chip called the Top SP12 chip, and we need to lift up a pin, specifically pin 12 on this chip, and we're going to solder 2 wires, one to the pad and one to the lifted pin. So finding pin 12 is pretty easy. So you have this little notch here on the chip that tells you that this is pin 1, and you can see that every 5th pin has a label, has some kind of mark on the silk screen. So this is pin 1, this is pin 10. So right over here, this is pin 12. So let's go ahead and just lift that pin up. And we're going to do basically the same thing that we normally do for X stations. So we're just going to heat up the pad, add a little bit of flux, and then I have this little hook tool that I can use to get that pin up. There we go. Not too bad. So we're going to get this guy all the way up so that it's completely removed. And I'm going to tin this as well. There we go. So now we have 2 wires that are going to attach. One of them goes to the pad. Just like that. So now I'm going to tin that lifted pin. We're going to solder the second wire over to that. And the instructions tell you to cut these to about 4 inches, so that's very helpful. They give you very, very clear, detailed information on what to do. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring both of these up like so, and I'm going to use something, most likely some Kapton tape or some electrical tape, and just hold these guys down, and that will keep them from flopping around or moving. Okay, so now we're going to attach this main SD loader board onto the main motherboard here. So first thing we got to do is take this flexible cable, and we're going to install it into the socket. You do it with the blue side facing up towards you. There we go. You want to be careful with it. You don't want to bend it or damage it in any kind of way. And so now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be attaching this over the top of this Motorola 68000 chip. So it should be labeled MC68, and that's how you can find it. It might be in different locations depending on which version of the motherboard that you have. So what I'm going to do is, you can see that there's an arrow over here indicating this is the top of the socket. And then you can also, if you look at the 68000, you'll find that there's a little dimple over here. There's also a number 1. This tells you that this is the top of the 68000. So it's just going to go in like so. You push down and you feel it kind of click into place. And there shouldn't be any kind of air gap between the chip and the socket. And now we know that these two are firmly attached. Okay, so next thing we've got to do is we've got to solder these two wires to points A and B over here on the loader. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Okay, so I'm going to start by just tinning these pads. Okay, and we're going to take this wire here, which is attached to the pin. That's going to go here on B. We're going to take the wire that's attached to the pad on the motherboard and solder that to A. There we go. Okay, so this next step is optional, but I'm going to be doing it because this allows the CD drive to remain operational. So we've got those 3 wires on the underside of the board that connect to C and 3. You can see that they are labeled, so the one that's closest to me on this side down here is pin 1, pin 2, pin 3. So pin 1 is going to be soldered into this pad here labeled Z. Pin 2 goes to X, and then pin 3 goes to Y here in the middle. So let's go ahead and make those connections. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and just bend this flex cable. And we're going to bend it like so that the contacts are facing upward and they're heading out towards the left-hand side of the system. And you don't bend this too hard, just enough to kind of curve it into position. Okay, so for some versions of this kit, you'll also get a piece of foam like this. And this is something that you're supposed to put on the inner portion of the shielding, and this just puts a little bit of extra pressure on the socket that's attached to the Motorola 68000 just to make sure that it makes a good connection. So all you have to do is just reattach the shield temporarily just to figure out where the 68000 is, and then just put this right here, and you should be all set. All right, so I've gone ahead and reassembled most of the console, and I couldn't really capture this on camera, but I just wanted to show you that if you're doing this the same way that I'm doing it, where you keep the original CD drive intact, then you've got to take this CN2 connector over here, and it's going to plug into this little slot on the SD loader. It's called the CDDA, and if you could see the whole PCB, there's actually an arrow on the silk screen of the PCB, and so you can see that this connector has 3 wires. 2 of them are gray and 1 of them are white. The arrow here is pointing to the direction of where the white wire should go. So the white wire should go right over here all the way at the bottom. So this is the top one, middle, and the bottom. The bottom one is where the white goes. So this wire here is very short, so you have two options. One is to solder your own wires and no longer use this connector, but I was able to make this fit. It was just really tough because the wire was very short, so I had to kind of reassemble the console, and then using some needle nose pliers, I carefully negotiated this thing into place so that the white wire is down here. All right, so let's continue putting this thing together, and we're getting towards the end of this installation. Okay, so if you're going to be installing this alongside the original drive, then you would get an adapter that looks like this. So you can see that I've taken this piece over here, and it's bendable. You don't want to bend it too much, but you can bend it just a little bit, and you want it to be at a 45-degree angle like this. And so now I have the top of the shell, and you can see here's the disk drive, and then there's a PCB over here. So what you do is you remove a single screw right over here, and then this is going to lock right into place over here, and that sets it up so that the SD card slot is accessible through one of these little vents. So now all I've got to do is just screw this into place and make sure everything's lined up, and we should be good to go. Okay, and so for the last step, we're going to be taking the flex cable from the main PCB, and we're going to be attaching it over here. And you want to have the blue contact facing upward just like beforehand. And I think I'm going to have to do this off camera because everything's just a little too crowded here. Sorry about that. All right, so we'll come back and we'll have a look at the final results. Okay, so I've buttoned up the Neo Geo CD, and you can see over here that this is where the SD card fits. So it's kind of funny. It looks like it's just going through one of the vent holes, but that's where the SD cart reader is located. So just so you guys know, this is not the kind of card slot where you push and pull to eject. This is the kind where you have to push it in and then you actually have to pull it out in order to eject it. So just make sure that your reader is lined up and just be careful when you're inserting the card. It's definitely not something you're probably going to be inserting and ejecting too often. So my suggestion is just get your card ready however you want to and then put it in, and that's it. When you boot up the console for the first time, it needs to do a bunch of installation. So I think it dumps your ROM files from your Neo Geo CD directly. So when you first boot it up, you actually get a black screen, and you'll get some blinking blue lights over here indicating that it's doing the initial setup procedure. So once all of that is finished, then the console will reboot and you'll come straight into the Neo CD loader, which is what you see right here. It's a really nice interface. You can just toggle through and pick whatever game you want. And yeah, it's pretty impressive how quickly it loads, and everything works great on it. So yeah, I think that's about it for this video. What I really just wanted to do is just go through the installation process on this and show you how it is. It's actually not that difficult to install. I would say it's definitely easier than installing an X-Station. And there are variations of this installation, so what I did for this particular model may not apply to you, but at least it gives you an idea of what to expect. Alright guys, so thanks again for watching, and if you guys have any consoles that need to be repaired or modified, you can also reach me directly at oneuprestorations.com. Alright, thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time.